Hey everybody, this is Brian.
And this is Josh.
Welcome to the podcast for Curiosity Continuum.
Curiosity Continuum is an industry-innovating, non-traditional company passionate about growing wisdom in the next generation.
We are the essential bridge between the analog and digital worlds by building collaborative communities that unleash the power of adaptive expertise and innovation needed to thrive in the 21st century.
We combine and mix essential elements needed to empower people to succeed in new ways, not possible outside of a creative, thoughtful, diverse community of fellow curious people.
Follow us on your favorite podcast app to receive notifications of new content. If you like what you hear and want to dive deeper, visit us at curiositycontinuum.com. Thanks for tuning in. Let's start the conversation. Well, here we are. And Josh, what's been on my mind recently, especially with a son that's graduating high school, starting to plan his adult life flow and everything, is like the movements of your life. And I'm thinking about even like songs, different big movements in classical music and things.
Sure.
Sometimes the act, or even like in a movie, like you have act 1, act 2, act 3. Now it all tells one story. For all of our lives, we have a story that we want to tell, or the story that is told from our life. But sometimes those side quests or those other things don't make sense in the moment. And I've been finding myself recently trying to understand, is this actually the side quest or the quest? Is this
right?
Is something? Is it like one of those weird albums like U2 dropped the pop album? There wasn't really anything like it afterward. It just kind of was what it was. I'm trying to think through, like, do the movements of your life make sense to you?
Right. Like in the big scheme or when it's happening?
I mean, like right now, you know? Does your life make sense to you? Like, you clairvoyant? Where you just know?
Well, I'll tell you what my experience with this has been. When I was younger, I didn't really anticipate a lot of the stuff that would happen to me and the things that would happen to make my life change, right? And you'd have these inflection points. Now, I didn't really always understand the inflection points. So, like, graduation is an inflection point. Like, you graduate, that's a big life event. And you have to start making some decisions that affect your life for the next 5-10 years, probably. Now, it's usually not as drastic because, like, you can make a bad decision usually at that point because you might be living at home still. You have some support structure, things like that. But once I started like moving out on my own, got married, that kind of stuff, those life events with those inflection points, if you would have told me, if you would have said, oh, this is what your life is going to be like 25 or 30 years from that point, I wouldn't have would have believed you. And it's in a good thing. It's a good way. I like where I'm at. Would I have took the path that I took to get here? Probably not. But that's also kind of that point that a lot of the stuff that happens to you, you don't really have control of, but you have control of how you react to it. So that's the thing. Like sometimes stuff is thrust upon you and you just have to deal with it. And however you deal with that does affect the movement of your life.
When you think about a really good movie, what's one that you've watched recently or a show where all of a sudden it was like a, oh my gosh moment? Generally episodics probably do that, right? It's the cliffhanger ending or something that, how is this going to shape?
I honestly can't think of one off the top of my head that I watched recently, but one from the past that was different like that was like The Matrix. From 1998 when it came out, or 99 when it came out, because it was like you went into you had to live that experience, I think, because that whole marketing campaign for that movie was, what is The Matrix? And everybody was trying to figure out what it was. Nobody I was with, or nobody that ever saw it with me that night when I went, the first night I went to it, nobody got it right. And so when you actually saw it on screen, it did blow your mind. And you were like, wow. Now, I think that like kids, they would think that's kind of lame because a lot of things do that. And it's not like these trying to recreate that big twist. And I think people are also less surprised with stuff just because of the state of the world the way it is now, that it is crazy. Like we can go from 1 week and you think, that never happened. Like if you would literally write like the last like 3 years of life that happened in the United States from like an American's perspective, and you like brought it to like 10 years ago, you brought it to like a movie exec and they would be like, this is not even believable that this is going to happen.
And yet
You know,
here
we
we are,
can't make
folks.
we can't make this movie, you know. But yeah, here we are. So that's the thing. And that's the point of that story with the Matrix is I didn't understand where it was but what it was, but when I figured it out and once it was told, I was like I was on board for the ride. And I think that's what's important. Like once you figure it out and you're like, "Oh, am I on board for the ride?" And I think that a lot of people today don't. They want to control every single minutia point of their life. That's part of the reason like a lot of people aren't having kids. They're not doing that stuff because it's like scary to them, right? And it's like they're like want to control every little bit, and you just can't. And sometimes some of the best things in your life are like stuff just thrust upon you, and you just do it, you know, and you're figuring it out along the way. Like when Brian had his first son. Well, his only son that I know of anyway, but Isaac, your oldest, right?
There's only one.
It wasn't something you guys
Yeah.
had intimately planned. Like, oh, I mean, you know, we're getting like, oh, we're going to do this on this day and we're going to have this and this. And then you might have tried some of that stuff and they're like, well, this is what's happening. And kids do really disrupt things because you know, it's like your whole life is different. And I see that even with the little bit of time I spend with my nieces and nephews of all ages and all walks of life, like from 25 on down to 1 now. So it's like everybody's at a different stage, but they're all disruptive in their own way.
You know, you're saying all that, and the theme I'm really thinking about here is almost like the diversity of experience
Yeah.
because people have different lives. This occurs to me sometimes when I'm driving down the road, especially on the freeway, and I see all these cars. I have no idea who these people are. I'll probably never see them again, but everybody has their own story. You're your own main character in your story. Well,
Yeah.
hopefully. Otherwise,
Well,
I'll let you know you are the main character.
you are the main character in your story, but there's also villains in your story, right? Like there's people that, and to them, they're not the villain. And I do think some people know they are the villain, but like certain people do not know and that they play that role in your life, right? But to them, you might just be just a normal person that they'll never see again. You know, somebody who cut you off in traffic, that's like a villain to you that day. That might totally upset your life for, 5-10 hours, depending on how bad it was.
And they haven't thought one thing about it, and they moved on.
Yeah, like there's this famous scene from Mad Men. I don't know if you've watched that show, Brian, but it's so good. It takes place in the 60s. It's ad exec, and Don Draper is the main character, John Hamm's character, and a guy steps in the elevator with him in one of these scenes, and he's like, he turns around to him and he's like, I like think about you all the time. Like you took something from me, at one point in my career, and the elevator doors opens and he just looks at him and goes, I don't even think about you at all. And he just walks right out. And it's like this awesome moment of like this guy's living rent free in this guy's head, and it's like, and the other guy had no clue. He didn't even care. So I think that's what that movement, that kind of thing, the perspective, everybody's perspective is different. And it's challenging to me to think about that because how do others perceive you matters. So even in like a business setting, like if you're talking to somebody, how they perceive you matters. Are you good for that point in your life with that story, right? Are you in that good spot or is this a problem? That's kind of where I'm at with this whole thing. Like it's very not confusing, but complicated. It's complex.
I don't think I realized how broad the overall human experience was until I got to a certain age. And I obviously don't still understand the fullness of it. If you've listened to this podcast for any period of time, you've heard a lot of me talk in a particular phase of this about going back to Korea for the first time, and then as Josh and I have had our life conversations offline, it's been a lot of other things like, hey, remember when I was this age, what was I like, and just a friend that's been with me for a long time to be able to explain these things to me. I think what's happened for a lot of this most recent phase, last several months especially, has been revisiting and reprocessing things that I experienced and saw through an adult lens, right? It's like you understand it differently now because you're past that particular point. It's the vantage point. It's the perspective thing.
Yeah, it's the
right?
hindsight is 2020 point.
But I sometimes, like when I think about movements of life, I'm like, well, what happened here? What happens now?
Right.
And I think for myself, I crave the clarity of 2020 vision before something happens. Again, you said people want to be in control of their life, right?
Mhm.
But I've had things happen. Go like, what does this mean? I've honestly wrestled with that in terms of when I came back to Korea. Like, now what does this mean going forward? I know it means something, and there are things I definitely felt. There are things I'm rethinking about. There are plans I'm trying to make, but I don't fully know all of that. One great example of that is for adoptees in reunion. That basically means that you've met reconnected with your birth family, right? No matter how you play that narrative, it doesn't make your life less complicated. It doesn't. You know, you say, "Hey, look, I found you," but then there's all this other stuff. So when I said, "What is that orchestrate?" You're orchestrating the next movement of your life. You don't know. Like, you just don't know.
No, you don't know it. You are composing it as you go. It is not this like, I know. You might know, like, you were born, and you can put the main things in your life that happened up until this point, and you could probably extrapolate out some other stuff, like you're going to die at some point, but you don't really know how you're going to get to that point. Right? It almost is kind of morbid to think of, but you have to look at the totality of it to understand the middle part of it. So if everybody, you have a beginning and an end. So what happens in the middle is important. But then you also figured out, well, I've already gone through this part of it, and it might be halfway. It might be more than halfway. It might be way less than halfway. We just don't know, right? And that's so. And I do think as humans, like, we do try to extrapolate the future. It's because of risk management. And it's like, and you can go to a store and go to like a self-help section in risk management, or go look up risk management online, and you'll see everybody's perspective under the sun about what risk management is and what it means to you, and buy this and do this. It's all this. It's a huge industry all on its own. But if you look at it, we're hardwired to avoid that. But the people that are like really successful, they know when to take the risk. They're managing the risk, so they can negate some maybe of the really bad stuff from happening, or make it a low probability that would happen. And I think that's what you have to look at when you're looking. Like, that's what I look at when I'm looking back at my life. Well, I did this, and this, and this, and this happened. Two of those things are really good. One was like, I could have done without that. But
right.
Right. But I still got to where I am today, and I'm happy where I'm at. So would I really not have done the other sequence part? So when I go forward in the future, I'm like, well, I could still make a bet here. And if it screws me over for a little while, well, I'm okay with it, because I'm going to get to where I want to be, or I have a better chance of maybe getting to where I want to be.
I want to take this to twist it for like the kind of the last motion of this episode. I'm thinking about two different things that can relate, but they can deviate as well. There's the idea that ignorance is bliss. Some people are the most confident when they don't know crap, and they're just charging forward and they have no idea.
I've thought about this in my adult life. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The second component of this is like having faith, right? That something will be good in the face of something maybe that's adverse or not quite where it's supposed to be. When you said it's risk mitigation, I'm going to flip it and say, is it because some people are just that much more confident or ignorant that just blaze forward? Like, they know a thing and they go and something happens. Like, they don't know any better. It's like, I think it was like a video or something like that where there's like the baby walking, and there's like alligators that are about to eat him, and there's a car coming, and the baby just kind of maybe it's baby day out, where it's just like the baby's just walking, just happy as can be.
Because it doesn't understand the risk there, the danger part, right? And there are people like that, Brian. We all know those people. And sometimes I look at those people and I'm like, God bless you. I mean, really, like, I worked with people like in polo. Remember, we worked with some younger girls that were like that. They were just kind of didn't really understand a lot. And I'm sure they do now because they lived. Yeah. Well, yeah, there was guys too. I mean, it wasn't just girls, but there was younger people, we were all younger at that time. And you were just like, well, don't you know that something really bad can happen? Well, maybe. I'm like, okay. But I get it. I get what you're saying. So maybe we should unpack this kind of like, this might be like more of a series of episodes kind of together. Yeah. Maybe.
Let's put a comma here And we'll pick it up in another episode. Josh?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I thought you were going to say, yeah. You said you're going to pick it up. And I was like, yeah, okay, well, let's just pick it up. So, all right. So this is Josh. Bye. Yeah, I'm
This is
good with
Brian
that.
For Curiosity Continue. All right. See you, folks.